Disclaimer, disclaimer. I am a student. I am learning the material at the same time as you. I don't have mastery over the material, so there may be errors. Actually, there will be errors probably. And missing information. So I'm not trying to teach the material, but I'm just trying to share the tidbits and ideas and patterns and ways of grouping the material, and little tools that help me to remember things easier and understand the material better and faster. Okay, this is how I remember the cranial nerves. Okay, you got one nose and two eyes. So cranial nerve 1 is smell, your olfactory. 2 is sight, your sense of sight. 3 comes right after 2 because it's associated with the eye as well. It moves your eyes. So these are the eye movers, 3, 4, and 6. So it's like a pair, 3, 4, 5, 6, except you have to skip the 5. So these 3 move your eyes. Now, 3 basically does all the work for moving your eye. That's why it's called the oculomotor. 4 does like one muscle and pulls your eye in one direction, and then 6 just pulls your eye in one direction. So it's like these ones barely do anything. They're just like the little lackeys, and this is the main one when it comes to moving your eye. So those are your eye movers, those 3. They start with 3, and they're a group of 3. After that, you have 5 and 7. So these are a pair. That's why we have them presented where it's like 7 is like one chapter, and then 5 is a chapter right after. So 5 is your trigeminal, and 7 is your facial. Now, it's interesting. It's like we name them for the motor function is how I think of it. So obviously 5 is not named for its function. It's like just the 3 parts, trigeminal. But 7 is named facial, right? And 5, what is the main thing that it does? Chewing. It does motor for chewing. And chewing is the motion of eating. It's a motion affiliated or associated with eating. But the interesting thing, the reason they're a pair is that 7 is associated with the face, so it does motor for the face. 5 is associated with eating, so it does a motor for the eating, which is chewing. But when it comes to the sensory, they actually do the opposite one's thing. So the sensory for your face is actually from 5, not 7. And then the sensory for eating, which is taste, right? That's 7, not 5. So they do the sensory for each other. So it's like I scratch your back, you scratch mine. So since they help each other out in that way, they're a pair. The same is true for 9 and 10. They're a pair. So it's like, well, they don't have the same relationship of like doing the sensory that you would associate to the other one's motor, but they're a pair. So these are the 4. They're a pair because 9 is glossopharyngeal. Okay. Gloss means tongue. Pharyngeal, that's pharynx, that's in your throat. So you can kind of tell from that they will be affiliated with swallowing, with your voice, with things like that. Now 10, the vagus nerve, that's also affiliated with digestion, and your voice as well, your voice box. So they kind of help each other out doing those similar, type things, involved in those type of things. So they're a pair. Now, the vagus nerve, cranial nerve 10, does more than just digestion type stuff. It actually, I think of it as the ultimate cranial nerve because it does like everything that, it has to do with like the things that are most crucial for life, like staying alive. So it has to do with your heartbeat. It has to do with breathing, your lungs, and it has to do with your GI. So like digestion. So it's like those are the pretty much the three main most important things for staying alive. Your heart has to be going, pumping blood. You got to be breathing, and you got to be able to eat to survive. So vagus nerve is like involved with all those three things. So I kind of think of it as like the ultimate one of the cranial nerves, like the most big and important one. Like I do more than you guys, I'm more important than you guys. And it's like the one that goes down past your head and neck, right? Because your heart, lungs, and GI are not in your head and neck. All the other ones, the things they're doing are pretty much here in your head and neck, around the cranial nerves. So yeah, Vegas is special. And it makes sense that it's number 10 to me because it's like, okay, these are all like, well, not all of them. Most are single digit, but it's like, I'm the culmination of all of you guys. I'm the one that's like, at the end of the single digits, I'm 10, I'm the first double digit. So it's a special number and it's a special nerve. 11, if you draw a neck, that's an 11. Like, 2 lines, 11, that's your neck. So 11's for your neck, the spinal accessory nerve, that innervates your traps to move your neck, which we talked about earlier. We learned about it earlier. So yeah, 11 I associate with the neck because, it's the neck. And then 12, hypoglossal. So it kind of goes there. I just awkwardly put it there. It moves your tongue. Hypoglossal, right? Gloss means tongue, and hypo means below. So hypoglossal, below the tongue. This nerve goes out below your tongue to innervate the muscles that pull on your tongue to move it around. So it moves your tongue. We also see glossal here, tongue, pharynx, throat. So just know that there's not just one cranial nerve that has to do with the tongue. There's two, so don't get it confused. Hypoglossal is underneath your tongue, helping to move it, innervating those muscles, and glossopharyngeal, it's involved with your tongue and your throat. It does the taste for the back part of your tongue, right? The posterior 1/3 of your tongue, since facial is already doing taste for the anterior 2/3 of the tongue, the front part of the tongue. So that's that. Oh yeah, I skipped 8. If you draw a speaker, it's 2 circles. That's 8, Like, come on. What's the other thing? If you're drawing a cartoon and the guy is yelling and he's sound waves are coming out of his mouth, wah wah, sound wave attack. What's that? That's 8. Like circles. And then if you draw your ear on the side of your, actually, I want him to say. If you draw like an ear, that's 8. Like if you draw an 8, that looks like your ear, yeah, it looks like an ear. So 8 I associate with sound and in general because of this whole thing. And yeah, it worked out perfectly for me. I'm God's favorite because 8 is for your ear. It does your sense of hearing and your sense of balance. So it's called vestibulocochlear because vestibular means balance. Because there's some things in your ears help you with your sense of balance. And cochlea is a thing in your ear that helps you with hearing. So the sense of balance and the sense of hearing. Cranial nerve does 8. Cranial nerve 8 does all that, and it's in your ear that those things are done. Okay. Now that I went through my little drawing of how I remember it, not that I draw this out, but just more like, I always start it like this. You have 1 nose and 2 eyes, so, like, I feel like it's pretty intuitive. And then the things that move the eye directly follow the nerve that gives sight to the eye, numerically. So it's like you have 2, then you have 3, It's like eye, then you have the other thing of the eye. And then you have the pairs. Oh, yes, I needed to say that these 4 cranial nerves, these 2 pairs, I call them the big 4 or the big 2 pairs. They are the way I think of it is they are the most powerful and important cranial nerves because each one of them has both sensory and motor functions. Like how I was saying that 5 and 7, they do motor for their own associated area, but then they do the sensory of what you might intuitively expect the other one to do. So it's like your facial, I do the sensory for the face. You're chewing, eating, but I do sensory for eating, which is taste. So they have both motor and sensory functions, and 9 and 10 also have both motor and sensory functions. Those 4. All the other cranial nerves only have either a sensory function or a motor function. They have to choose one. They don't have both. Let me put the names now. Okay, I'll go back now and I'll do like how I remember the names going back through. So I like to think about the function first because that's meaningful. And it's like, that's what it's all about. And then the names are like, I treat them as a secondary. Not saying not to know them, obviously, but it means that I derive the names from the function. So that's why I went through, like, I kind of did it by function first. So now we'll go through and do their stuff. Maybe I should just leave that for now. Okay. Smell, you got one nose. Cranial nerve 1 is your sense of smell. Olfactory, I think of like a muffin factory or a cookie factory. If you got a factory full of those, it's going to smell really good. And I do that because I used to get confused with like the olfactory and the ophthalmic, and it got very annoying eventually. So I said, this is a factory and this is off, like a off. So with your sense of sight, if you turn the lights on and off, a light switch, you can turn the lights on and off. Or I kind of think of it as when you close your eyes, you're turning that light on and like you're turning it off. Like you can open your eyes, turn it on and off. Because they say that the eyes are the light of the soul or something like that. So light on, off. Move your eyes. It's oculomotor, so it's very intuitive, which I love. Oculo for eyes, motor for moving. Move eyes. Trochlear, I'm pretty sure I actually didn't look for the etymology of that word, like the root, Latin root, the reason it's called that and all that. I should do that later, but I kind of just think of it as like, it's just a weird sounding word, and it's a weird cranial nerve because while this guy is doing like almost all the muscles that move your eye, move it inward, move it up, move it down, this one literally just only innervates one muscle, and it's like some random weird oblique muscle. I think it's a superior oblique, but it's like oblique means diagonal, slanted, off, weird. So it's like, you're weird, so it makes sense that your name is weird too. Trochlear, it just sounds weird and like off and goofy. And then when you draw the 4, it's like, when it comes to trochlear nerve, I always thought this 4 looked better, but when it comes to trochlear nerve, I intentionally only draw it like this because it's like that diagonal line, like, you're oblique, you're weird, you're diagonal, you're off. You're not like just going like normal. You're like, trochlear. It just has that vibe to me, like trochlear. It's a goofy name, so it makes sense that it's innervating this oblique muscle and it's just this one diagonal muscle. Abducens. Okay, so in the Hebrew culture, the Israelite culture, the people that you see living in the Bible, they considered, in the Bible, the number 6 is like the number of the devil. So I always associate that number with villains and like mischief and malice and things like that. Whereas the number 7 was considered the number of completion, the number of perfection, the number of God. So, there's a lot of instances where Jesus will tell somebody, dip yourself in the river 7 times, or I want you to do this, forgive your enemy 777 times. 7 is like a big thing all throughout the Bible and all throughout the culture that it came from. So for me, it's like, okay, your face, that's like your smile, that's your expression, that's like how you communicate your emotion to other people. That's literally the most philosophical cranial nerve. Like all these other ones, just random things like smell, sight, hearing, blah, 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 blah. Like facial is like, that's the one that shows your emotions. That's the one that's the most emotional. That's the one that it's just, it just makes sense that 7, the number of perfection, the number of completion, that's the facial nerve. So that's just the association I have in my mind. Seek ye the face of God. That's why I tell people sometimes. It's like, okay, 7 is the number of God. Seek ye the face of God, so face. I don't really like say that when I'm thinking of it because like the vibe just matches. But you know, if that vibe doesn't match for you, then maybe that saying "seek ye the face of God" will help you. That little tidbit of information. 7 is the number of God. 6 is the number of evil. So okay, abduct, right? Abducens is, it comes from the word abduct. We already know that abduct means to pull away, to take away. And it makes sense because if you're a child abductor, you're taking away the child. If it's a UFO abduction, they are taking away the human from the planet, the aliens. So abduct means to take away. And you know, a child abductor, that's evil. You get what I'm saying? A child kidnapper, that's evil. So for me, it just matches 6. It just like goes together. So that's what cranial nerve 6 does. It moves your eye away from the midline. So it only innervates this nerve that pulls your eye away. Lateral rectus. Why did I write it if I was going to write it like that? Anyway, the lateral rectus muscle. So it just does one movement of the eye away. Take away, abduct. This just does one movement of the eye. I need to like brush up on what it actually is, but some weird oblique movement, weird. And then oculomotor, it's called that because it does all the other movements of the eye. It's like pretty much doing the heavy lifting when it comes to moving your eyes. Okay. Abduct. Cranial nerve 5, trigeminal. This is not how I remember it, but the way I remember it, it's like this, it's a vibe. So you're not going to get it. It's too personalized. So I'm going to give this one instead. Somebody liked it in lab. Shout out Myra. So I'm going to share it on here. Okay, you got a 5, right? 1, 2, 3. 3 lines. A straight line, and a curved line. So it's like trigeminal, 3 parts. If that helps you remember, then there you go. Actually, now that I think of it, if you do your test A drawing for the 3 branches of the 3 parts of the trigeminal nerve, V1, V2, V3, it's literally like a straight line, and a curved line. Come on, like, that's just good. That's so good. I don't remember. Anyways, the drawing starts with a straight line, and a curved line. Straight line, curved line. That's a 5. Okay, cranial nerve 5 is trigeminal. We already did facial. We did the speaker. You know, it just works. The sound waves. The ear on the side of your head. Glossopharyngeal. We talked about that. Yeah, it does your tongue, your throat stuff. Yeah. Yep. 12, hypoglossal, moves your tongue. Yeah, so that's how I remember them. That's pretty much it. Yeah. Going back to 9 and 10, this pair. One of the 2 big pairs. I don't know if I said they're also very important for singing, both of them. 10 controls your voice box. 9 is your throat. Throat is important to singing as well as your voice box. You know, when they say like, my throat is feeling bad today, singers say that. So it's like, that's another connection that pairs them together nicely. And obviously they come one right after the other, 9 and 10. And this is close to that, 5 and 7. It would be that way if not for 6. Bad little 6 going outside of where you would think that he's supposed to be.